This is the World News at 6 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Choma Innocent. First, the highlights. National Executive Council suspends fuel subsidy removal temporarily. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak congratulates Tinubu, expects his visit at 2024 African Summit. Nigerians evacuated by road from Sudan stranded in the desert. Journey continues after outcry from students. And the group cautions Biden, says Obidients behave like Trump's supporters. On the foreign scene, defector police boss killed by bomb in Ukraine. Details now. Thank you for staying with us. The World News at 6 begins with the National Executive Council recommending the temporary suspension of fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria against world recommendations. The Council agreed that the plan to remove petrol subsidy should not be executed yet. The Council, however, said all preparatory plans with various segments of government, including state and the incoming administration, should be intensified. Reacting to this is Muda Yusuf, the director of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise.
What I expect INEC to do in this matter is to show umpire to all the political parties, because what they are actually what I expect.
There is a development. Okay, so there's a write-up by a certain group. There is a development.
Meanwhile, the National Association of Diaspora Alliance in the United States of America has hailed Nigerians for coming out stronger after its internal wrangling over the recently concluded presidential election in the country, saying the nation has a strong internal problem-solving mechanism. This was contained in a letter by the leaders of the association addressed to the U.S. President Joe Biden and signed by Dr. Oluseyi Senu-Oke and Dr. Dotun Aliyu, chairman and president respectively. The group noted that this is like the case of Trump, where he filed more than 30 frivolous and unfounded court cases in an attempt to overturn the election, but he ultimately lost them all. Reacting to this is Elvis Elimihele, a political commentator and public affairs analyst.
Okay, so there's a write-up by a certain group. They call themselves, there's a particular name, they call themselves the National Association of Diaspora Alliance in the United States of America. And they actually hailed Nigerians for coming out stronger after the internal wrangling over the recently concluded presidential elections. But there's a statement, they actually said that the president of, there's a letter which was written by one Dr. Oluseyi, okay, and Dr. Dotun Aliyu, chairman and president of that particular association respectively. And then they are saying that there's nothing wrong or nothing to worry about Nigeria's unity, saying the nation will always come out stronger despite the escalating grievances. Now, the group likened obedient supporters of the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi to that of former U.S. President Donald Trump. They stated that it is imperative to also clear the air on some few individuals who have been spreading falsehood about Nigeria, saying this is extremely dishonorable, but it is manageable. Now, we do know the character of Trump and that he has massive supporters, meaning that regardless of who Trump is and whatever it is that he does, it is always right, in the presence of his supporters. This group literally is saying that the impression that is being created by the Obidients about the just concluded elections is not as they portray it. but they are just a massive group of people who would support their presidential candidate regardless of whatever it is, and sometimes their tone could be harsh. In the open letter, he declared that he had won the elections. That is, they were referring to what Peter Obi said in the letter, that he had won the election and that it had been stolen from him. However, his ardent supporters began acting out his script, claiming that the election has been rigged. This Association of Diaspora Alliance are trying to clear the air that that is not true, and that they should not believe this particular sect of supporters, that that's not actually what obtained in the just concluded elections. What's your say concerning what this group is saying now?
So the group is saying that he did not win the election.
Yes, and that the impression that they're saying that the elections were rigged, meaning that possibly he ought to have been the one to win the elections, that impression is not the reality, but that his supporters are just like, former President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. And so they will always, whatever it is that Obi says, they will go with it, even if whatever he says is not factual.
This is funny. I mean, the Diaspora Alliance, they know more than those of us that are at home, yeah? I hope this is not part of the propaganda the federal government took to US and UK recently, it was even in Washington that the Minister for Information said Obi should be arrested for treasonable felony. I hope this Diaspora Alliance are not buying into the propaganda of the federal government.
In fact, they literally said that they established the Obidient movement, which actively and precisely followed the script dumped Trump method, in line with the strategy employed by Donald Trump's most ardent supporters, which is using all available means to undermine and cast doubt on the election and the president-elect on a national and international scale. In other words, they are saying that the Obidients are crying, but that rather than them going to court to prove that, okay, their mandate was stolen from them, they're escalating it and painting a story, making representing the just concluded elections as false and not duly done, followed by protocols. So they're warning Joe Biden not to listen to the calls and the clamor of the Obidients that the elections were rigged, that is not in actuality what it is, and it is a bad representation of Nigeria.
Yeah, I'm afraid of this on this release from this Diaspora Alliance, because the Obidients are not violent. We saw Donald Trump supporters. They went to raid what they call it in US last time. But Obidients, since this election came and gone, the Obidients has been calm. They only attack those that come to their own space, to discourage them or to even counter what they believe in. They believe that Obi won the election. And they are also in support of Obi going to court. And they are also believing that the judicial system of Nigeria will be able to prove it, rightly, the actual winner of this 2023 general election.
Well, they are saying that just like Obi is crying wolf like Trump, that Trump filed more than 30 frivolous and unfounded court cases in an attempt to overturn the election, but he ultimately lost all of them. In other words, in all the cries that Trump said the mandate was stolen for him, literally making his supporters break into the White House when Trump told them to go take their stolen mandate. They did all of that, but that proof in court proves that he did not win the elections, that Joe Biden won the elections. That is how the supporters of Obi is. They're just like Trump supporters, very wild, and selling the script that the elections were rigged, that it is not as the Obidients say it is.
I think if they want to be truthful about this matter, they should have known what we face, Nigerians face during this 2023 general election. The Trump supporters did not face the intimidations Nigerians faced, because of electing on their own leader. The Trump supporters did not face the umpire, INEC, or whatever the electoral body in the US shifting goalposts at the middle of the election. What they told us as we were preparing for the election was not what eventually played out. The Trump supporters did not face that. The Trump supporters can never be compared to Obi supporters. Obi supporters are calm. Labour Obidients are calm. They only content, you don't come to our space to come and criticize us or counter what we believe in. So a situation where they are liking them to Trump supporters, I don't support that, and I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that their own opinion.
But do you think this National Association of Diaspora Alliance are actually representing all most interest of Nigerians in diaspora, or is a certain subset, in support of a particular political party under this umbrella that could have actually written this letter to Joe Biden? Recall that Chimamanda Adichie wrote a letter, talking about what the just concluded elections in Nigeria was and wanting Joe Biden not to congratulate President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Could this be also one of the reasons why they also wrote to Joe Biden to counter the letter that was written by Chimamanda?
Yes, let me tell you what is going on is not far from this propaganda the federal government took to the world. That is going to start selling the what they call the credibility of this 2023 general election. That's what you are saying. The alliance, this alliance, the diaspora alliance that are speaking, they are not speaking for Nigerians in diaspora. And let me tell you, Esther, before the end of this week or between our next week, you will see another release that is going to come from Nigerians and saying that they dissociate themselves from this, whatever release that came from this diaspora alliance. This one, they are like I told you last time, before the swearing in, and even after the swearing and all of that, because this judgment in this matter, we are going to be seeing, groups like this supporting or against. They are going to see more. Because all they are looking for is just to, discourage the Obidients and the Labour Party supporters so that whatever they feel is in the court, they may not have interest in it. Just look at what we have been tackling on this week, and here we are. And this one is coming from abroad now, in diaspora. So we see more. I think sort of what the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, went to do all over the world last time, and when he started telling the world that 2023 general election was credible, free and fair. But let me tell you, not the ID from the Nigerians in diaspora. Another group will come tomorrow and counter this. This is what we are going to face the swearing in, and even after the swearing in. Politicians.
Meanwhile, the National Executive Council has recommended the temporary suspension of fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria against world recommendations. The council agreed that the plan to remove the petrol subsidy should not be executed yet, although all preparatory plans with various segments of government, including states and the incoming administration, will be intensified. Reacting to this is Muda Yusuf, the director for the Center of the Promotion of Private Enterprise.
So the National Executive Council has recommended the temporary suspension of fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria against world recommendations. And they have agreed that the plan to remove petrol subsidy should not be executed yet. Meanwhile, we have the Minister of Finance and Planning, Budget and Planning, telling us almost 2 or 3 weeks ago that the International Monetary Fund was able to approve $800 million for the cushioning of the complete removal of fuel subsidy, especially to vulnerable Nigerians, so they can, possibly help themselves while that particular subsidy is completely removed, as that they will mostly be affected. Now that's the first tranche, there's more expected. There was more loans beyond $800 million. So now that money has been collected, what then happens to it? Would they still use it, to help cushion the shock of the subsidy removal, or what exactly will happen to that money?
Now, what National Executive, the subsidy removal was supposed to be effective in June, and that should be under a new administration. The subsidy removal is not expected to be effected in May or April. So my sense of what is happening is that they want to leave it to the next administration to handle, because it's something that is supposed to be effective from June. That is one. Secondly, concerning the palliatives and the amounts that have been received. Now, we don't have evidence that they're already disbursing yet.
No, they haven't started disbursing.
They haven't.
But that's the plan that they intend to use the money for.
That's what's their plan. So I also imagine that whatever will happen to that fund will have to be managed or will have to be decided by the next administration. So I don't see the current administration disbursing or managing any fund for palliative. And I think it also makes sense for the announcement of subsidy to be made by the new administration. Yes, it's already on the program that subsidy will end by June, or I think end of June or something.
June, yes.
Aha. By June, this administration will not be there. It's the new administration. So it is for the new administration to make that decision and to manage whatever palliatives. So I think it makes sense for this administration to just go quietly and leave the new administration to handle the subsidy matter. That for me is what the sense I can make.
The president-elect already said it during his campaign that there will be subsidy removal. He said that is a certainty.
Yes, so let's wait for him. Let's wait for him. The program we have is that subsidy will be removed in June. That is when he will be in government. So there's no point for those who are in government now to be announcing a subsidy removal. If they announce now and there is a crisis, how do you want to manage the handover? How do you want to manage the transition? So it makes sense for them to go and allow the new administration to handle it.
Meanwhile, the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has written to President-elect Bola Tinubu ahead of his inauguration. In the letter, Sunak said he looks forward to working and to welcome him to London in April 2024 for the second Africa Investment Summit. He said the summit will be a key moment to strengthen the UK-Nigerian business partnerships in order to create jobs and growth, to increase bilateral trade and investment, and also to support his aim of boosting Nigeria's export competitiveness. In the meantime, one day after the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyema, said the Nigerian government will be spending $1.2 million to hire 40 luxurious buses to be used for the evacuation of Nigerians trapped in Sudan, the buses were stopped in the middle of the Sahara Desert by the drivers, who claimed that they had not been paid by the Nigerian government and other relevant stakeholders. This was seen in a video posted this afternoon by Twitter user Dr. Ahmad Small on his verified handle, where the students are seen venting their frustrations after being held in the desert for over 4 hours by the drivers. About an hour later, the chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, posted on her Twitter handle that she had contacted the National Emergency Management Agency and the Nigerians were on their way. Speaking on this development is Mr. Ademola Adeyemi, a political analyst and a political affairs consultant.
The first thing, of course, that we know that every government is responsible for the security and protection of its citizens, their lives as their property. Now, before I go further in my response, I would like to, let us look at what Buhari's foreign policy is all about. Because what he said, I think, according to his chief of staff, Professor Gambari, was that he's first of all concerned about Nigerians, and then our neighbor, and then before we talk about the West African states, and then before we talk about Africa as a whole, and then to the world. Yes, and then to the world. And then, of course, that is not anything far-fetched or too far from Nigerian foreign policy principles, which is normal, which is of any president. Now, if you recall very well, if you're going to look at Buhari's administrative style, initially, everybody thought that, if you look at even before he started his administration, 6 months to, 6 months gone before the cabinet was finally elected. So this, I don't know what to call it exactly. I don't know whether to call it being meticulous or a foot-dragging attitude, as you said. I don't know what to call it exactly about Buhari. But the issue is that the angle that I'm really, what I'm really angry about is that sometimes I'm going to get on something. What this really says of Nigeria is the fact that it further paints us in a very bad light in the eyes of the world. That is my issue with the whole of this. It is this same daftness, this same dragging attitude, this same shabbiness that we exhibit internally. How can you imagine that a bus driver will get to the desert and then stop? Because I heard 3 days ago that there was a budget of $1.2 million, reserved for that. And so I personally was happy that, wow, this is something good. And I heard, I think some days back too, that Air Peace decided that it will leave Nigeria. And so I don't understand why they now resorted to, taking them back to Nigeria via the bus. Sometimes it's not just about the president. It's not just about his foreign policy trust. Believe that the president is concerned. I want to believe that. And I want to believe that ever since this war broke out, and that other world leaders have been making efforts to take out their citizens from Sudan, I believe that Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has been doing the same. And I want to believe that also the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jeffrey Onyema, I believe that he is also trying, I believe that he also has that same mindset in his heart. However, this is Nigeria. This is Nigeria, where a lot of things to drag, where a lot of parties are involved in so many things. For instance, Jeffrey Onyema, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, cannot himself go and book a vehicle. Are you listening to me? There are parties involved. So, he can only direct, and he can, by his own way, supervise what is being done. So, at the end of the day, we cannot really attribute the fact that this happened or that the students are stranded in the Sahara Desert to the fact that they didn't act. I don't want to believe that. Because if that is the case, then it speaks a whole lot about the current leadership, about Nigeria, about our status in Africa, about what we claim to be, the giant of Africa. It says a lot. But I don't want to believe that, because I believe that the president must have given the order. I believe that the funds must have been released. I believe that this would probably be down to the fact that there are a lot of other parties involved and a lot of maybe bureaucratic bottlenecks that are involved. I don't want to believe that there was somebody in between that would have embezzled money that is supposed to be paid for the bus drivers. I don't think I want to believe that. Are you getting what I'm saying? So I believe that, this is Nigeria. Our administrative side sometimes, despite in the face of emergency, we still follow the normal bureaucratic process, the normal slow, the normal, this one has to approve, that has to approve, it has to go through this, it has to go through that. I believe that is what is going on. And I believe that, and it's not so encouraging, because this is lives at stake. What these are Nigerians are talking about. This is a war situation where any delay, any kind of tragic can lead to a loss of several lives. So why our bureaucratic system, why that might be the case for this, then there must be a way to fast track things in the face of current situation. That is my opinion about it.
All right. About an hour ago, the chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, said she posted on her Twitter handle that she has just spoken to the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and that the buses have started moving. She also said the issues between NEMA and the transport company has been resolved. Now, don't you think that Nigerians deserve to know what the issue is? Because if this student did not come out and post this video, we may not have known about it. Now we know that they have started moving again, but don't you think that Nigerians deserve to know the reason why the bus stopped in the first place and in the desert of all places?
Well, I am opportune to have, really been to the public service and know what goes on there. I am opportune to know a lot of things that go on. The fact is this: yes, the government might come out to explain what diffuse is the case. But it's what they explain. That is what we will know. Quite all right. People deserve to know. But it's the information they give us. That's all we know. Are you following what I'm saying? It is the information they give us. But I just feel that this one that we have a war situation and we're running on around, and then you have to, NEMA is now having a problem with the transport company. I feel there's supposed to be a standby plan any time, any day for this kind of emergency. And I don't think that kind of a plan is not on ground because we are not financially capable of doing it. I just feel it's a matter of leadership, it's a matter of forthrightness, and seeing things ahead. You can't tell me that United States are now going to be looking for buses or flights and then going on around and taking time you can't have that in developed countries. This is one of the things that people, this is one of the accusing things that countries of the world in Africa, that they point to Africa, to Nigeria, that Nigeria, you can't say you are the giant of Africa, and yet everything around you points to the fact that you are not. This is not because of a giant of Africa. And now the chairman and diaspora commission have to come to the decision and say, National Emergency Management Agency, I have now resolved. We don't have to know all these things. What people need to know is the fact that there have been transportation put down and the people have been brought to Nigeria safely.
Now, on the front scene, a police chief in the occupied Ukrainian city of Melitopol, who defected to Russia after they seized the city, has been killed in an apparent partisan bombing. Alexander Mischenko died when an improvised device exploded at the entrance of the block where he lived. There have recently been reports of heightened Ukrainian partisan activity in the region after Mariupol. Melitopol is the largest city and territory occupied by Russia since February 2022. And that's it on the world news at 6. Just before we wrap up, let's take a look at the headlines again. National Executive Council suspends fuel subsidy removal temporarily. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak congratulates Tinubu, expects his visit at 2024 African Summit. Nigerians evacuated by road from Sudan stranded in the desert. Journey continues after outcry from students, and group cautions Biden says Obidients behave like Trump's supporters. On the front scene, defector police bus killed by bomb in Ukraine. And that's it on the world news at 6. My name is Chioma Innocent. Please follow our social media handles at VOP 903 FM. For coverage of a live event and brand news mentioned on our news bulletins, do send a mail to news@voiceofthepeople.ng. Good evening and thank you for listening.